Often when we think of magical internet money, we immediately think of Bitcoin.
Have you bought any of those Bitcoins?
Let's talk about digital money and a bit of history today. As someone who's not a complete
Bitcoin maximalist,
but someone who leans more towards Bitcoin, I thought this week would be a great week to start our next latest news segment, what there was before Bitcoin. You may be surprised to find out that actually a decade or more before Bitcoin even started, there were libertarians out there trying to start their own digital forms of cash, and some of them started almost right after the internet started. So News BTC did a great job of covering this. Bitcoin is the iteration of an old idea with new technology. The technology, blockchain as we know it, is however unique enough to change the way the whole fintech industry works. There were many who came before Satoshi Nakamoto with the intention of creating digital currency that can power an alternative economy, but failed due to technical, regulatory, and even ideological reasons. So Bitcoin essentially perfected what others before tried to do. And we see this in so many different technologies, don't we? We see how technology starts and it may not be that great. Like Tesla wasn't the first electric car to start. There are so many technologies before it that just either were the beginning or the foundation, and then they built off of that. And these digital currencies that we're going to talk about today are exactly that. They kind of laid the foundation for Satoshi Nakamoto to see, the test runs and what worked and what didn't work at all. In 1996, one of the first digital currencies was called e-gold. And you know what actually it preceded after? The internet. But check out this video here in 1996 of someone ordering groceries. You'll love this.
This is the Cyber Market, IGA's new internet shopping service, the only one of its kind in North America. The service costs $3, and for an extra $4, they'll deliver it.
Groceries are very boring and monotonous, and I'd rather stay home and play with my kids than go to groceries.
People who are likely to be very technologically inclined and to have the right equipment at home, that's a very high-income group. Okay, a group who tends to spend a little more lavishly on groceries, and so it's worth it to supermarkets to go after that segment.
In January 1996, there were 100,000 websites, compared to more than 160 million in 2008, and I'm sure we're way above that now in 2022. The web browser of choice was Netscape. Now get this, most people use dial-up internet connections with mighty speeds ranging from 28.8 kilobytes per second, highly modern 56 kilobytes per second modems would arrive in 1997. If we ran on 28.8 kilobytes per second right now, you would die. Like, the internet was so slow that you could literally click on a website, go make a coffee, come back, and then the website would be loaded. This was a time when if you were on the telephone at home calling a friend and someone started the internet, it would interrupt your phone call because the internet ran over phone lines.
Crazy stuff.
But if you know that sound, then you're old enough like me. My first internet was 56K. That's incredible. That's incredible how slow. It's amazing to see where we've come from a place where commentators say that, only elites and only the lavish are able to afford to order groceries from their home. And now we're in a place where I can order it on my phone, and so can you. It's not just for elites, it's actually gone out to the masses. News BTC, it said that eGold was started in 1996 by an oncologist named Douglas Jackson. A lawyer managed to have over 5 million user accounts by 2009. The digital currency was backed by gold, and it turned out to be a very successful venture. Continued attacks on the platform by cybercriminals and use of eGold as a favored currency by extortionists and money launderers led to its downfall. Extortionists and money launderers. All those extortionists and money launderers that are always using the digital currency and no other form of money ever, right? Like that just seems to be the go-to. Maybe even the elites say,
Oh, don't touch that because money launderers and criminals are using that.
that always seems to be the way that they portray the narrative for digital money. Now, there's one thing that we have to kind of wonder is, are criminals ahead of the curve? Are they the ones that are actually forward on innovation? Because they seem to be the ones that are always using these disruptive technologies before everyone else. And they're labeled as criminals and money launderers and extortionists when they're the ones using these platforms first before everyone else. Maybe criminals are just like early adopters. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts below. What do you think about new technologies coming in? Would you use them? Do you use eCash or eGold in 1996? When you look back at that video of the lady ordering online, like think about that. If you had to use a website like that, I think it'd be kind of sketchy to try to use digital money on a platform like that was so new. So eGold again is this centralized place where people can trade money. And then web money came out. And web money is again this centralized place where people can trade money. They can send money to a friend. But it's still this centralized place. NewsBTC says web money became the next best thing after eGold and attracted many users, both good and bad, from eGold once it was shut down. Okay, so here's the difference. However, web money made changes to its services soon after that to prevent its usage for illegal activities. Now, web money still operates 25 years later, and you can check out their website at wmtransfer.com. And what's the difference? It kind of got into the favor of the regulators. That's the difference. The way to be successful is to allow the government to come in and control and to regulate and to make sure that you're doing everything right so these criminals and these extortionists don't use your platform for nefarious reasons. Is that really what's going on here? Maybe that is. And then we bump ahead to 2006, and Liberty Reserve comes in. Now, Liberty Reserve allows you to trade currency without verification, without saying who you are, or any of that. So already...
This is a really good platform for libertarians.
But maybe not government entity. So the problem with Liberty Reserve, again, is that they are a centralized platform and they are not free from censorship. Why weren't they free from censorship? Because they were a centralized platform and anyone could come in and shut them down. So what is censorship? Well, censorship's an authority that limits the ideas that people are allowed to express and prevents books, films, works of art, documents, or any other kind of communication from being seen or made available to the public because they include or support certain ideas. So each time these platforms opened up, what did they do? They ended up bringing about censorship. Really, it was government censorship. And we hear about censorship even to this day. We hear, people getting silenced on Twitter, people getting silenced on YouTube for saying things that authorities don't agree with. They may support certain ideas. Maybe they're that fringe minority
that are holding unacceptable views.
Whatever the culture may deem at that time as being appropriate. If a company, a fintech company, opens up and decides to not take information of all their users, regulators come in and say, you know what, we don't really want you to be allowing this to happen. We want to know who is sending money on your platform, who is moving money so that we can keep money launderers at bay. Even though the US dollar is probably one of the most laundered currencies in the world. There have even been banks that have been charged with money laundering, but they still continue to do business as long as they follow the right footsteps. Let me know in the comments below if you think that's even accurate. Just something really to think about. Looking at Liberty, the article stated, However, as expected, it became the most favored place for cyber criminals, and the government didn't like it. And its promoters were jailed for money laundering and supporting illegal activities. This is so interesting that they shut down the platform and they jail those that are promoting it. Yet when you see in like the elite class, the managerial class, big banks that are caught money laundering, those big bank executives are not going to prison. Those people are just getting slapped with a fine, $800 million, $600 million, and then they're free to go, which is kind of sad. And yet some of us, peasants, and those that are watching this could be like, that's interesting that those guys get jailed, but the elites don't. So after Liberty Reserve came out Perfect Money, the site was called Perfect Money. Perfect Money actually came out in 2007. And it says that a lot of their clients kind of moved over to Perfect Money. But Perfect Money is still operating because they operated within the regulatory framework. So you can kind of see a contrast here where there's two digital currencies that came out, but one is allowed to operate and the other isn't. So what is it? Like, why is Perfect Money allowed to operate, but Liberty Reserve is not? And there's a stark difference in between. Both of them are centralized. Okay. Both of them allow people on board. But what is the difference? Oh, Perfect Money actually looked for people to verify themselves on the platform, where Liberty Reserve didn't. And what did Gotham from News BTC? I love that this guy goes by the pseudonym Gotham. Anyway, Gotham from News BTC, what did he say about Perfect Money? Like most of the other digital platforms in the past, death of one established platform will result in a surge in growth of its successor. The same thing happened with Perfect Money. Customers from Liberty Reserve flooded Perfect Money after the former was shut down by regulators. Perfect Money also offers services similar to that of Liberty Reserve, sans the lack of verification. Big difference between the two was that, as News BTC pointed out, sans verification. So Liberty Reserve was, you didn't have to verify. You could just send money to your friends and your family, and you never had to say, hey, I'm Nate Polmateer and I'm sending to Jeff Soros or whoever. I know I use Soros, but anyway. Now this is interesting because when we walk around with cash, and then I walk over to the supermarket and I buy a whole bunch of groceries and I give them cash. The cashier never asks me, what's your name? What's your address? What's your date of birth? But if I use a credit card or I even use my debit card, the bank has all that information. They ask for that information in order for me to use their services. But if you use cash, then you don't need to do that. So if you're using Liberty Reserve, it would be much like using cash, but over the internet. But they still want to know who the people are because they think only criminals and money launderers are going to use that service. Well, if that's the case, then why don't we just get rid of cash completely? Physical cash, because no one is verifying anyone that has the physical cash. Then in 2009, the mighty Bitcoin came into play. The first Genesis block was minted and the first Bitcoins were created in the software. What was different about it? Bitcoin has an advantage in the form of its decentralized nature, which leaves the whole platform in charge of a much larger community than an individual or corporation. This will also eliminate the possibility of someone running the whole setup to manipulate the public in order to satisfy their own greed and selfishness. Not to mention the fact that the Bitcoin protocol is open source, preventing anyone from having a monopoly over the whole system. Bitcoin has this one thing that the rest of them didn't have, and this is what Satoshi Nakamoto perfected, where Bitcoin is decentralized. So all of these places have one website, one person that could be corrupted, that could be attacked, that could be censored, that could be shut down, where Bitcoin operates on a network of a bunch of nodes, thousands of nodes. So if you came in as the government and shut down all the computers in Canada, the Bitcoin network would still run because there are other places in the world that it's running. You can send Bitcoin over a radio signal. There's so much more to the Bitcoin network than there was of these previous currencies. Many things were the same, where it's person-to-person exchange, but on Bitcoin, you don't need to know who the other person is. You don't need to have their first name, their last name, their address, or anything like that. I could send Bitcoin from here to a random person over YouTube. All I need is their address, and I can send it. And you can make an infinite amount of wallets. You don't have to have the same wallet. It doesn't have to be attached to your name. You can use it once and then never use it again. So security, safety, decentralization. This is the history of some of the digital money. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a great week. I'll see you guys next week in the next latest news